Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're getting incredibly practical. For all the architects, designers, and fabricators joining us, we're doing a real deep dive into the engineering, the fabrication, and honestly, the real-world costing of architectural honeycomb composite panels. We're going to break down exactly what makes this material tick, pulling directly from the Fidar System 2026 spec and price guide.
It's the classic architectural dilemma, isn't it? How do you hold a massive architectural plane completely rigid without entirely crushing your substructure? When you want a huge, seamless, translucent feature wall or maybe a massive counterfront, you are immediately fighting physics. Massive, heavy plastics usually demand massive, heavy framing. But what if they just didn't have to?
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. First, the weight dilemma. Second, honeycomb anatomy. Third, solid versus honeycomb. Fourth, our fabrication survival guide. And finally, the fighter advantage. Real math, real fabrication truths. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The weight and span dilemma, where heavy plastics meet their structural limits.
Picture this. A designer envisions a big, stiff, brilliantly backlit feature wall. Solid acrylic is usually the very first thought, right? But it comes with a major, heavy compromise. Look at it from the warehouse floor perspective. A standard 18mm solid cast acrylic sheet isn't just a piece of plastic. It weighs about 64 kilograms. That is an absolute two-person lift. It means you need wider doors just to maneuver the thing on site. And crucially, it demands a heavy, expensive substructure just to hold it up. Getting stiffness out of solid plastic requires adding thickness. And well, thickness means debilitating weight.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of a Honeycomb Panel. It's all about engineering over mass.
So how do we actually fix this heavy physical problem? We borrow a trick right out of the aerospace playbook, aerospace-grade geometry. The solution is what's known as a sandwich panel. It's this ultralight structural composite. The absolute brilliance of this concept is that a panel's resistance to bending doesn't actually depend on how much material you have, but where that material sits. By putting 19mm of mostly air between two flat sheets, you get a panel that is mathematically way superior to a solid sheet.
Think of it in three parts. First, the faces. These are the clear acrylic sheets doing the heavy lifting. They carry the tension and compression when the panel tries to bend. Second, we have the core. This is hexagonal aluminum foil. Now, the funny thing is the core actually does none of the bending work itself. Its one and only job is to hold the faces a fixed distance apart. And finally, the bond. This adhesive line is your quiet failure point. If you mess up your cutting or your fabrication technique, this right here is exactly where the panel will fail.
Now this is where the engineering gets wild. Look at the sheer exponential leap in performance. If we take a 6mm solid panel as our baseline, it has a relative stiffness of 1. But if you jump to a 19mm honeycomb panel, like the HEXABEN Clear stocked by Fidar, the stiffness spikes to 21.6 times that of the solid panel. And honestly, the best part, the weight barely creeps up at all. It goes from 7.14 to just 7.79 kilograms per square meter. That is an absolute game changer for large architectural spans.
Section 3. Solid sheet versus honeycomb. Let's cost out a real wall.
Let's shift gears from the engineering side to your real-world budget and cost out a typical scenario, a 16-foot by 9-foot seamless feature wall. This brilliantly illustrates the true cost of your design choices. So let's just tackle that $2,700 per panel HEXABEN price tag head-on. Yes, buying 5 panels of honeycomb costs $13,500, compared to just $3,607 for 8 panels of solid acrylic. But check out the waste. Because standard acrylic sheets are 8 feet tall and your ceiling is 9 feet, you are throwing away 44% of your acrylic as offcut waste. Plus, you've completely ruined the designer's seamless vision because you're stuck with 4 visible horizontal joints right across the wall. The honeycomb panels, though? At 10 feet tall, they swallow that 9-foot ceiling perfectly. 0 horizontal seams and only 13% waste.
But honestly, the visual compromises aren't even the heaviest burden here. And I mean that literally. If you build that 16 by 9 foot wall out of solid 18mm cast acrylic, your dead load is 510 kilograms. Seriously, I want you to imagine trying to hang a grand piano on your interior drywall substructure. That is the sheer physical reality of using solid plastics at scale.
So it all boils down to this. 510 kilograms of solid acrylic dead load versus just 120 kilograms for the exact same wall built with HEXABEN 19mm honeycomb. When you frame it like that, the honeycomb premium isn't just some markup on a fancy material. It's the unavoidable price of achieving a buildable detail that doesn't force you to use massive, expensive structural steel reinforcements.
Section 4.
detailing, lighting, and cutting. Consider this your fabrication survival guide.
Now that we've firmly established why you want this stuff, let's act as your fabrication survival guide. Because trust me, you absolutely do not want to ruin a piece of material this expensive. Here are your golden rules. First, cap every single edge. If drywall dust, or worse, a rogue insect, gets inside an open, clear honeycomb cell, you literally cannot clean it out. It becomes a permanent, highly visible nightmare. Second, always spread the fixing load. Never just crank a screw down, or you'll permanently dimple the face. Third, if you're backlighting, and let's be real, you probably are, test your setbacks. LEDs typically need 80 to 120 millimeters of space so you don't print hotspots directly through the hexagons. And finally, please, leave the protective film on until the very last trade has packed up their tools and left the site.
So what actually happens when you put a blade to this? Remember, you are cutting through acrylic, then air, and aluminum, and then acrylic again. If your tool is dull, it isn't going to cut. It'll just drag and peel that acrylic face right off the aluminum core, which permanently destroys the panel. Always support the entire panel so it doesn't flex mid-cut. You want to use an 80-tooth or higher triple-chip carbide blade for any straight cuts, and a single O-flute bit at 18,000 RPM on your router. And above all else, let the tool do the work. Never, ever force the feed rate.
Section 5. Order from Fidar system. Cut, crated, and delivered.
Now that we know how it works and exactly how to protect it, let's talk about a totally frictionless way to actually get this specialty material into your shop or onto your job site without the headache. This is where the Fidar advantage really shines. First off, we actually stock the HEXABEN 19mm clear panel right in our North York warehouse. That means absolutely no waiting around for overseas shipping containers. Second, we offer a precision cut to size service. That means if you let us handle the cuts, all that fabrication and delamination risk stays right here at our shop, not on your balance sheet. And third, we quote the panel, the cutting, and the created freight all together as one package, so the number in your budget is the actual final number you pay.
And here is a massive value add for you. We want to invite you to buy directly from us, and to make it even easier, we're offering free delivery for orders above $700 within 30 kilometers of our North York warehouse. So if you're in the GTA and you are specifying this material, having this local inventory and zero cutting risk is the absolute perfect opportunity to buy directly and seamlessly. It's a huge, tangible benefit to your project budget.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Is your next feature wall going to be a heavy, seamed compromise or a seamless, lightweight masterpiece? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. If you are ready to engineer something truly beautiful without all that structural dead load, give our warehouse floor a call today and let's get your quote started. Until next time, keep building smart.